More Santas have read it. What is the weirdest thing a kid asked for Christmas? I have a brother who was 6 at that time, and vacuum cleaners were very much his special interest. He had a little photo album full of catalogue cutouts of vacuum cleaners, and he'd tell us which ones were his favorite and why. He was so excited when Halloween came around, because he told us all he was going to be a vacuum cleaner. Unfortunately, I think our mom was embarrassed by his fixation, and instead made him a costume to look like an ear of corn. It was a very clever handmade costume, but you could tell he was disappointed. On Christmas Eve, I took my brother to meet Santa. He told him that all he wanted was a vacuum cleaner and a rope. Santa thought he misheard him and made him repeat it. Still, my brother insisted on asking for the same thing. Santa gave my mom a really weird look. In fact, my brother loved to vacuum the living room. He would get mad if anybody else did it, and say, I was gonna do it. The rope was so he could tie a wagon to the back of his bike and use it as a trailer. But Santa didn't know that. He thought my brother was some kind of slave child, possibly seeking to hang himself. I'm not a mall Santa, but I've taken my kids to see one before. Last year, my son kind of flustered a Santa. My youngest has a lot of complicated medical issues. The first year of her life she was completely blind. She had a rare disease at birth, which caused some brain damage. So last year, when my oldest hopped on Santa's lap, the first thing he asked him was, "Hi Santa, can you help my sister see her presents? Her eyes don't work." I tried to shush him, but the damage was done. The poor Santa got red in the face and kind of stammered for a second. Finally, he was able to say, "Oh, little guy. Santa will try, okay? But please don't be angry if it doesn't work. Santa's specialty is toys, not eyeballs." My son seemed cool with that response, and went on to say, "That's okay. You can bring me Ninja Turtles instead, if Catherine's eyes can't get fixed." Poor Santa. But the neat thing is, a month or so after Christmas, my daughter's vision did start working. Every once in a while, my son will see her playing with a toy and say, "Santa helped her." He remembered to help her eyes. Heart-wrenching with a twist, I worked as a mall Santa in high school, and likely experienced every crazy story you could imagine, but one in particular stands out most vividly in my mind. A young boy waited quietly with his mother in line, until it was his turn to sit in my lap, and have his picture taken. As his mother started to follow him up toward my chair, he turned around and yelled, "No, Mom, you have to stay back there." I watched the mom look at him pleadingly, and she reluctantly agreed to keep her distance. As I tried to make sense of the situation, I invited him up to my chair. He looked to be 8 or 9, which was older than most of the kids in line. When I got around to asking him what he wanted for Christmas, his eyes locked onto mine, and it happened. If you're real, then aren't you supposed to know? As I fumbled around with my words, it dawned on me. Here he was, on the cusp of becoming a non-believer, and his plan was to make sure his mother couldn't whisper to me the gift he had been hoping for. I tried to play it cool, and come up with an explanation on the fly, when suddenly the mother dropped her bags and started jumping, punching, and kicking the air. Furiously, shoppers stopped dead in their tracks, staring at her. I said something along the lines of, "Well, you can't expect me to bring you those Power Rangers, if you aren't a good boy and listen to your mother." He melted, instantly. His eyes grew wide, and his jaw dropped. Before I could react, he buried his head into my foam-padded chest, and gave me the best hug all Christmas season. The mother couldn't believe it herself, and tried to gather herself as her overjoyed son turned to run, and explained to her how Santa really is real, and that he had proven it. This is a grim one. I worked part-time at a restaurant in my late teens, so I witnessed this. Christmas Eves were usually really busy, so to earn more money, the owner came up with the idea to pretend to be Santa for a few hours on Christmas Eve and charge something like £2 per kid. This one dad came up to my boss, paid the money for his kid, and then went to the toilets with his other child, leaving the kid with Santa. Santa asked the kid what he wanted for Christmas, and apparently the kid whispered into his ear, "I want Daddy to go away." He asked the kid to explain why, and apparently the dad had beaten up the mother a few hours prior and had locked her in the shed in their back garden before taking the kid and his baby sister out to eat. They had been crying hysterically, and he was worried the neighbors would hear and get suspicious. Santa then asked the kid for his address and told the manager to call the police. I think some police went to the house, and then some turned up at the restaurant to arrest the dad. A social worker also came to collect the kids. We never found out what happened to them after that, but it ended up in the local paper and got loads of promotion for the restaurant. When I was in the army, I stayed back for Christmas one year. The rear detachment first sergeant volunteered me to play Santa at the Christmas party for everyone else that stayed back. I'm a big guy, so it made sense to ask me. I figured hanging out with the kids would be better than talking to drunk officers who could ruin my life if they wanted. Our squadron operations officer came up to me when I was done playing Santa and was gonna sneak off to my barracks room. He told me his wife had recently been diagnosed with cancer, and he was pretty sure their kids would ask me to get rid of mom's cancer. He asked if I was comfortable dealing with that, and I said sure. He and his wife bring them over. We take a picture, and then I ask their daughter what she wants for Christmas. The first thing she said to me was, "Mommy is really sick, Santa. She has cancer." I don't remember word for word, but here's a close recreation of what I said. I can do a lot of great magical things, but even I can't cure cancer all on my own. I need you to be strong for Mommy. Always show her that you love her. Help her around the house if she needs it. Be there for your little brother. He's too young to understand all of this. Trust Mommy's doctors. They know what they're doing, and they're trying their absolute best to heal Mommy. And if it all becomes too much, don't hold it in. Talk to Daddy, or maybe an uncle or aunt. They'll understand and appreciate how strong you are, and they'll help you. If you can promise to do all of that, I promise to talk to Mommy's doctors and help them as best I can. She nodded and said, "Okay," throughout my little speech, and gave me one of the best hugs of my entire life when I was done. I tried to avoid any phrasing that gave certainty. I didn't want Mom to pass away and this girl's image of Santa to be destroyed. Losing Mom would be enough. Might as well try to preserve Santa for her. Later that following year, when I was out processing from the army, I had to go to his office and get some paperwork stamped. He asked me to sit down and told me his wife had recently been given the all clear. She had beat her cancer. He said their daughter told his wife's doctors what Santa told her, and that the doctors said Santa called and told them where to look for cancer. He didn't even bother checking whether or not I had actually done what I needed for our processing. He just stamped my papers. When I was leaving, he gave me a hug and offered to be a reference when I needed to find a civilian job. I've been answering Santa's mail for over 20 years. I'm a postal worker, and we volunteer to answer letters, though I've seen it all. There are always sad ones, when little kids ask for their dead parents or grandparents, or ask to pass a message to their loved ones. There's always a weird adult venting about child support, divorce, or money troubles. There was a group of 4 daughters, who all asked only that their dads saw back get better. There was a strange kid asking for guns, knives, and a lizard. There was one kid who said he was sick of being alone, and he was so lonely he offered to become an elf. Last year I got a letter written from a guinea pig And we've had a few from the family dogs, so we treat those extra specials. When we get extremely troubling letters, they get special attention. If it's something I feel like I can handle myself, then I will usually send a small gift along with an encouraging letter. I send coloring books or crossword puzzles to the stressed people, and I've sent picture frame ornaments for those who have lost a loved one. Fortunately, I've only gotten a couple of really disturbing letters, but it's becoming more common to get letters from stressed adults. My grandfather played Santa 4 years. All year long kids would ask if he was Santa, and he'd always smile and wink. At the American Legion, he'd do their annual Christmas party and gift all the kids stuff bought in advance. One year the fire department offered to drive him in the back seat of the truck. All the kids lined up to see him. He never showed up. You can see where this is headed. The department got a call for a fire in another town. Bad. They rushed over with my grandfather in the truck still. So, there's friggin' Santa Claus watching this poor family's house burn down. And he's on the ground, playing with the kids and their dog, keeping them distracted as their whole life go up in flames. Said he lost it when someone came to pick him up. He'd asked if Santa could bring them a new home to live in, and he didn't know what to say. I was a Christmas pixie at the Magic Cave, the biggest, most magical place to visit Santa in Adelaide. It was a section of the 4th floor of the department store turned into a sparkly cave with things like funhouse mirrors, animatronics, rocking horses, lucky dips, and expensive toys. Because it was always packed, they employed 4 Santas hidden in small rooms in the Magic Cave. A pixie would lead the children and parents through different gates to each of the rooms. However, if you leaned over one of the little gates far enough, you could see into the room where Santa sat. One day I was on line duty, keeping the kids and parents entertained while they wait in line, sometimes 4 hours. My go-to phrase was, "Have you decided what you're going to ask Santa for?" Which apparently, I said so much my partner told me I said it in my sleep. Most kids would shyly shake their heads, and then their parents would suggest things until they nodded. Then I got to brothers aged about 7 or 8. They were near the front of the line and trying to lean over the gates. One yelled, "I can see Father Christmas. He's through this gate." The other replied, "No, he isn't. I can see him here. There are 2. Seeing how they were about to upset all the children around them, I hurried over and hushed them. I crouched down. "Guys, I was hoping no one would notice this, but you got me. Can you keep a secret? There are 2 Santas." No, not at all. Furtive glances all around. "You guys know this is the Magic Cave, right? Well, that's just it. It's magic. Time and space are different here. We can't fit all the kids' visits in otherwise. That's why there are 4 doors. Sometimes, if you go through one door you can walk 4 hours and still not reach Santa. Other times, it's like he's just around the corner. It's always changing. And when you go in, you never know how long you'll be there." Whew, that's cool. I wanna go in the long passage. Yeah, me too. Oh man, I can't guarantee which one is which. It changes all the time, you see. But I know if you wait at this gate, you have a good chance. The mum, who was obviously over the whole thing with the hyper boys, just gave me a tired and thankful nod, and the boys ended up waiting excitedly by the gate. So in the end they just wanted to wander the depths of the Magic Cave. I had a bit of a giggle to myself when they came out and ran up to me. He was just around the corner. It must have changed again. Have a good Christmas. I was the elementary school Santa for 3 years. This experience still haunts me. I'd had a long morning of little tykes, with retail advertising dreams of all kinds of shiny new must-have toys, older boys with dreams of motorized vehicles, and older girls with dreams of cute boys and makeup and clothes. After a break, I returned to a busy classroom filled with kids working on all the activities and having fun. And then, after another hour of the usual, I met two little children dressed in their Sunday best, and each of them perched on my knee, looked deep into my eyes, and asked, quietly and from the depths of their hearts, "Please, Santa, I don't want any toys. I don't want anything. I just want my baby sister to get better." And suddenly I knew who they were. Their little sister, age 7, was dying of cancer in the local children's hospital. We had already done a school fundraiser for her and her family. Our scout troop had raked leaves at their house and helped them with their Thanksgiving dinner. It took everything I had to not weep. I hugged each child close in turn, gave them their candy cane, and told them that it wasn't up to Santa, but I would do my best to put in a good word with the guy upstairs. I told them to remember that everybody loved them too, and that it was okay to have fun for themselves, and that I would do what I could to make sure they had some presents. They each smiled a little bit in turn, and went to hug each other and their grandmother. I could see the smile through the pain in her eyes, and she led them to other activities. I called a break to check on Rudolph on the roof, and walked as rapidly as I could to the teacher's lounge, where I wept quietly for the little girl and her family, and the unselfish love of little children, and then put on the suit and went back to work with a broken heart. She died 2 days after Christmas. We planted a butterfly garden at the school, in her name, just outside the office window. It's a pretty place, with a shaded bench and brilliant flowers, and the butterflies come there in the summer and dance. I have a cringy-ass story about a mall Santa. I was a freshman in college at my local mall. This mall is basically dead, hardly any foot traffic at all, unless it's the weekend. And I see a mall Santa. I accidentally make eye contact, and he waves me over. I walk on over to him smiling, and he's doing the whole Santa thing, and I am playing along for fun to not make it all awkward. His elves start talking to me, and you can tell them and Santa were bored and just looking for someone to talk to. Well, anyway, they asked if I wanted to buy a picture with Santa. I was poor at the time and was definitely not paying the $20 for a picture. I started to panic internally because I was like, dang, did they just talk to me for the last 5 minutes because they expected me to buy a picture? One of the elves says she bets my parents would love it, and that's when the horrible idea clicked in my head. I looked her in the eye and said, "Oh, sorry, no, my parents are dead," while in fact, they aren't. Dead silence from Santa and the elves. One of the elves pipes in that she lost her dad a year ago, so she knows and understands what it's like. They then talk to me for about 20 more minutes trying to make me feel better. I felt awful the whole rest of the month, and I'll still think about it sometimes and cringe hard. I am a professional Santa Claus who makes about 50 visits a year, mostly private homes, tree lightings, and the like. I'm happy to share some of the better requests I've gotten over the years. I've been playing Santa for 10 years. It's a part of my full-time job as a professional children's entertainer. I love what I do, take the work seriously, try not to take myself too seriously, and try to stay in touch with reality as much as possible. Most of my visits involve a reading of The Night Before Christmas and a bit of magic. I do all of this so that the children feel comfortable meeting with me when they do give me their requests. The interesting thing about Santa Claus's visits is the difference in motivations between the parents and the children. The children want to ensure I am bringing them what they desire for Christmas. The parents want to ensure they get a great photo of the children with Santa. I get the range from the funny to the poignant to the sad. But adhering to the topic, here are some of my favorite requests. A 6-year-old boy is waiting patiently in line to meet me when it's his turn, and hops right into my lap. I ask him what he would like for Christmas, and he mentions a few of the more popular toys that year, and then hands me a letter. I receive a lot of letters in person. I ask him if he'd been a good boy all year, He smirks, points to the letter, and tells me not to worry about it, and marched away. My curiosity was piqued, so I opened his letter at the end of the gig. In it was a list, a note that said, "Dear Santa, thank you for bringing me everything on my list. Love, Anthony," and a picture of Abe Lincoln. The kid bribed me with a $5 bill. I was horrified and quite impressed all at the same time. To this day, I can only imagine what he had done. A shy, adorable 4-year-old girl finally sits on my lap, after a great deal of coaxing by me, the photographer, and her mom. Won't say a word, complete silence, which isn't uncommon for her age and shyness level. I ask her if she likes princesses, ballerinas, soccer, or anything to get a nod or a quiet yes. Not a peep. After the photos, I reassure her that I will be bringing her some great gifts on Christmas Eve. Walks away clutching Mom's hand, suddenly bolts back towards my chair, get a foot away from my face, and practically yells, "I don't like mac and cheese." Thank God she told me, because I had cases at the North Pole ready to go with her name on them. Not really a request per se, but one of my favorite stories involves a 30 gentleman with Down syndrome. Children and adults with special needs are among some of my favorite visits. When I meet teenagers or adults with Down syndrome, I try to find the balance between treating them as an adult and remembering that I am still an important part of the magic of Christmas to them. He introduced himself to me and told me what a great job I was doing. He was quite positive during the visit and deflected the question of what he would like for Christmas. He finally mentioned how much he wanted an iPhone, but he was okay with whatever I brought him. Before he left, he unintentionally stage whispered directly into my ear, "I know you're one of Santa's helpers, but that's okay. Christmas is really important to my mom, and I don't want her to feel sad that I know you're one of his helpers," then gives me the requisite big hug and walks away.